In this video, I want to talk about the two components of sales, the two only really necessary components of sales that you need, especially in SMMA, if you want to close bigger deals, and not only bigger deals, but also smaller deals, any deal, to be honest. And that is how to correctly view the discovery section of a sales call and also the pitching section, right? So just learning how to really understand these two things took me from when I first started, it was probably close to like a 5% closing rate. I think I did the numbers one time. I just looked back to all the calls I'd taken. It was over something like 100 calls. I had like a 5% closing rate, right? So I'd close like 5 clients for 100 qualified prospects that had showed up. And I've managed to get that over time, over like the 2 and a little bit years that I've been doing this now, to consistently closing above 30%, right? So imagine how good that feels, right? When you know your numbers and your numbers are strong. So you know pretty much for every 3 people that show up to the call, I'm gonna assign at least 1 deal. And when you can run the numbers like that, generating cash becomes very easy because you have the skills to book appointments, you have the skills to close people, right? You can service them, right? It's like you really don't have much more to worry about at that stage other than scale, right? So I'll start with discovery, and a really big thing in the discovery section is just making it relevant to your offer, right? What you're gonna pitch later on, asking questions that are actually gonna get answers that are relevant for you to be able to pitch correctly, right? So obviously it all just starts with understanding the client's pain points, right? So you basically need to just ask questions in a way that reveal that. So it's literally just like, can you tell me specific challenge, like what are the biggest challenges you're facing in this specific area, right? And again, I'm linking that to an aspect of my offer. Let's say I'm helping them with lead generation, right? I'm not going to ask them what's your biggest problem to do with operations. I'm going to niche down into lead generation. Like, what specifically about lead generation are you struggling with at the moment? Just assuming they are struggling, and they're going to come up with an answer, right? And if they don't have an answer, if they're not struggling, then you can pretty quickly disqualify them, right? So identifying the root cause as well. So when you ask a question like that, let's say, what is your biggest problem around lead generation? You're going to get a surface level answer, right? And that is really where like things like labeling, things like mirroring, things just like asking them questions in a way that gets them to go deeper is so valuable. So you need to dig deeper, right? When a prospect answers a question of yours, they're never going to give you the true answer that you want straight off the bat, which is why the people that question, the people that are curious, get the best answers out of the prospects, because they get the underlying issues. So for example, if they mention like faulty lead generation, you could just be like, what do you think is contributing to the lead generation problem? And then they open up more, they may say certain things. And again, you can use things like mirroring, like repeating the last 3 words of what they said just to get them to elaborate more. So like an example of that in day-to-day life would be maybe me just saying, oh yeah, so my dog died recently. And then you're like, your dog died recently? And then again, I feel compelled to elaborate on that. You can use the same thing in sales, right? Sales is literally just a conversation, right? That's literally all it is. And you can use techniques like this. You can practice questioning and getting people to go deeper in your day-to-day conversations, right? And what's interesting about this is, like, people focus a lot in sales calls on like, oh, how can I actually make people open up to me more? How can I go deeper? But what's interesting is, if you've ever been speaking to a friend and your friend has a problem, or your friend just has something and you're genuinely interested in it, you're not thinking, oh, what method am I going to use to get them to go deeper so I can lead on to my next question? No, you're just genuinely interested. You're asking them like, why? Like, what do you think's caused that? Like, you're asking them questions to get them to open up, and you can just apply those same principles. Just be genuinely curious and just put it into the sales call, and you will get prospects. Like, you will be able to identify the root cause of their problems by doing that, right? So connecting to your solution as well is huge, like in the discovery call. So what I mean by that is just getting them to open up about previous things that they've tried related to what you're doing, right? And what you're going to be able to do here is really just get an understanding of how they see, like how they view like what it is that you're offering, right? Because if you understand how they view what it is you're offering, you're going to be able to tailor your pitch and adjust your pitch which suits that, right? Which changes that and which appeals to the views they have, right? Because yes, you can change certain beliefs they have around it on the call, but you're going to do that after you provide the service. So you may as well play in to how they view that specific aspect, right? And then go from there, right? So for example, if they had a terrible experience with a lead generation agency, like you really want to probe into what happened there, everything that went wrong, like things that went right. And then when it comes to the pitch, because you have that ammo, you can position yourself as different to that agency, why you're unique, and then you can shit on the agency and basically just talk about why they failed and how you're going to do it differently, right? Another thing is like relevance to the client's industry, right? So like you want to be asking questions that show you understand the specific industry and its challenges, which is why, like, if you take enough sales calls, right, you're gonna, with a certain niche, of course, you're gonna start to just develop an understanding of the niche, right? So you're gonna be able to tweak certain questions based on the feedback you've got to make more sense when said to that niche, right? So you can come across as like you know exactly what you're talking about, right? Because if you're asking broad questions, like broad questions, like for example, what's your lead generation like? How many sales calls are you doing? Like things like that. Yeah, they are relevant and they're broad for a reason, but you should be able to like throw certain questions in there and just have a level of industry expertise, which shows you actually know what you're talking about, right? And again, like you can throw things in there, like as you gain more and more knowledge about the market, like, yeah, it's pretty common for gyms to lose quite a few, to gain stupid amounts of members when it comes into January. How are you dealing with that? Like with maintaining those levels of members, or like maintaining that member fluctuation as it rolls around into like the middle of the year? Just something like that. That's an extremely simple example. Like I just came up with that off the top of my head. But you can see how I linked a question about lead generation into specific characteristics of the niche. So you can do things like that and like ask questions like, how's your experience been with that, right? After just referencing something specific, right? Probing for decision criteria. That's another big thing that I just had written down here. It's like understanding how they arrive at decisions and how they think. Because if you understand how they think, you can, change your pitch accordingly to suit how they make decisions, right? So again, like what's really important here is applying that in terms of like a solution they'd be looking for. So like asking them a question like, if you were to go ahead with a lead generation provider, like what exactly are you looking for? Like this question is so simple, but no one asks it. And because the question is literally saying like, what do you want me to pitch you? Like you're basically saying that, and they tell you everything they want, right? So again, like you just use all of that ammo to put it into your pitch, and then you can have a higher chance of closing them, right? So when it comes to pitching them, basically, right, like you want to acknowledge their past failures, right? Because you'll have dug deep into that in the discovery call, so you want to just keep bringing that up in the pitch, right? You want to keep bringing it up. Just say like, okay, so obviously on the call we discussed this. This is why it didn't work. Because this doesn't work. This is why we do this, this, and this. That's different, and we can achieve this, this, and this result, right? Just as an example, right? Because obviously the prospect has had a painful experience with what you're doing, so you're just trying to eliminate that pain. And you're just trying to make it clear by linking their pain into the pitch and eliminating it, that you're different, right? And then highlighting unique aspects. So your pitch should simultaneously be a reason why everything they've tried in the past has failed, and why you're completely different, unique, and why you're going to get them different results because you're unique and because you're different to what they've tried, which has failed, right? So you just want to highlight the unique aspects of what you do as much as possible, because you need to remember these guys are getting reached out to all the time. They really probably have a general understanding just from being on calls with people like you of what they think you're going to offer. So you can almost have an element of surprise the more unique you make it. Obviously, just making it unique for the sake of it isn't enough. You need to make it unique and actually logical to help them get results. So again, like talking about unique things is huge. Like talking about unique methods or just new things that you do is crazy. Like it's one of the highest leverage things you can do, because like, for example, when you see people selling courses or when you see people doing whatever, there's always like a new mechanism that they use, like growth operating or IPGA or I don't know, AI automation agencies. Like there's always like a new trend. If you can hop on this new trend and sell it to your clients, like in this aspect, it's going to be really effective, right? Addressing why others have failed as well. So not only just acknowledging past failures and like referencing them, but like actually digging deep into why you think those things have failed and why they failed, and then telling that to the client and saying like, okay, so your client just spammed out a load of, like for an example, your client, like sorry, the previous lead generation agency you worked with just spammed out a load of emails. They didn't do any targeting, they weren't relevant, they didn't really dig deep into who exactly you wanted to target. This is why it failed, this is why that doesn't work, right? This is what we're gonna do differently, this is how we're gonna combat that problem and make sure it's never an issue. And then this is how we're unique. Just as an example, that could be like a section of your pitch, right? So it's highlighting past failures, acknowledging why that doesn't work, positioning yourself as different, referencing an outcome, and then going from there. And you can just consistently do that over the steps that you have in your process, right? So just linking back to the pain, like basically when you're doing that discovery call, any like key thing that a prospect says that sounds painful or like you get pain from, you just want to write it down, right? And you should have a structured pitch, right? But it should be more of like a guideline rather than like a complete script that you use, because A, you don't want to sound scripted, and B, you want to give yourself an opportunity to link as much as what they've said into that pitch as possible, right? So just continuously tie it back, right? And then also just like one last thing I wanted to touch on was just creating a sense of hope. So again, this kind of is similar to the highlighting the unique aspect, but basically you want to just like, when you're talking about how unique you are, you want to almost like just foster this sense of like, oh, okay, this, like it might actually work. This guy might actually have something that's different, that's new, and there might actually be a chance for me to solve this problem, even though I've had all these past failures, just because of the conviction that he has talking about it. And like he has a new approach, right? Because maybe you're talking about how you can solve the problem from a new angle. Maybe you're talking about things that previous people haven't talked to them about, right? So for example, you could say, many solutions fail because they don't address this specific factor, which is crucial for success. So by doing that, you're talking about something that they've never considered, which gives them a sense of hope, like, oh, we've never tried this before, so maybe it could work, right? So again, those are the two main important things, well, to be honest, the only important things when it comes to sales at a high level, you know, discovery and pitch, right? Just two ridiculously important things that you need to have down if you want to close consistently, right? And those are just some things that I found effective for me when going through different sales training and just when learning, and they helped me get up to a close rate that I'm pretty happy with. Obviously I want to keep improving, but yeah, it's not too far off where I want to get to. That's everything for this video. If you want more information about what I do, how I can help, there's a link in the description. I help marketing agencies, right? It's not a course, not a program, nothing like that. I'm strongly against that. I take on around 1 to 2 people a month to help them with scaling, with systems, getting better at sales, booking more appointments, scaling, and that's everything. You can check that out if you want to. I'll see you in the next one.